I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Open the meeting for comments of public this time. Anybody wishing to address the board may do so. And nobody at this time. You will have a chance at the end of the meeting. Minutes of the previous meetings of August 4th and August 6th. You all have copies. Is there any additions or deletions?
Motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second. Motion made by trustee Menard, seconded by trustee Huckrow. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor vote by usual sign of aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Bills. You'll have copies of the bills. Is Arsen, is there any deletion? No, there is not. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
Second. Motion made by trustee Jefferson, seconded by trustee Huckrow. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor vote by usual sign of aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carried. Correspondence.
We have a letter that was received from Sharon Richards dated August 13th. It's to the attention of George Rivers and board members. I'm writing to compliment and commend our village for having some of the best guys around working for the community. I'm especially thankful that Bob Sterling is in our village's employ. After the monsoon storm, Mr. Sterling and Mr. Nelson Barkham responded to my call for help Sunday, August 10th. Water was literally pouring into my basement from the foundation front wall. This wasn't the first time Bob has helped me out in my cellar water predicaments the past few years either, but this was for certain the worst of the predicaments. And that was signed from Sharon Richards. We also have a letter from the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation regarding the D&H train station. It's addressed to me. We are pleased to inform you that the property noted above will be considered by the State Review Board at its next meeting for nomination to the National and State Registers of Historic Places. These registers are the federal and state government's official list of historic properties worthy of preservation. Listing in the registers provides recognition of our national, state, and local heritage and assistance in preserving it. Encloses a copy of the criteria under which properties are evaluated for listing. Listing in the national and state registers affords properties a measure of protection from the effects of federal and/or state-sponsored or assisted projects. It provides eligibility for certain federal tax provisions and renders certain properties eligible for federal and state preservation grants. It's quite a lengthy letter, but the bottom line is they'll be reviewing this later this fall and will be notified. And we have a letter, a copy of a letter that was sent by George and Nancy Black to Mr. Kelly Donahue, Assistant Director, Emergency Services. Basically, it's a fairly long letter, but the Blacks are requesting that their current assigned address at 310A Lake Street, Rouses Point, they are asking them to reconsider the address assigned to their apartment, and they would like it to be number 1 Edgewater. So that was just a copy that they provided to the village. And last but not least, we have a letter that was signed by Mr. Rob Boyer from TRB Development dated August 7th that was addressed to Mayor Rivers regarding Beacon Heights North Subdivision Phase 4. Dear Mayor Rivers, this letter is intended to address the status of the easement that is to be acquired by the village across lanes of Oakwood condominiums, an easement that will connect the 8-inch water main from Mountain View Drive to the 8-inch water main at Oakwood condominiums. On August 6th, our surveyor, Dean Lashway, spoke with the village administrator who referred the matter to the village engineer, Doug Ferris. Mr. Lashway spoke with Mr. Ferris, and a discussion ensued about the status of the easement and the time frame to secure the easement. We have reached a point where we need closure on the review of our subdivision. Mr. Ferris did suggest that if TRB Development were to commit to extending the water main from the termination as shown on the subdivision plans to the westerly bounds of the subdivision or the easterly bounds of Oakwood condominiums at a point that would adjoin the easement crossing the Oakwood condominiums, Mr. Ferris felt that would be enough to continue with the review of the Beacon Heights North subdivision so we could have closure on this phase of the project. TRB Development will commit to extending the 8-inch water main to the westerly bounds of Beacon Heights North Subdivision to a point that will be connected to a proposed 8-inch water main that will be placed within an easement crossing the Oakwood condominium and connecting with the westerly bounds of the Beacon Heights North Subdivision project. As far as the coordinated review with the Clinton County Health Department, all issues have been addressed by the design engineer, except item number 2 in the Health Department August 27, 2002 letter, and they enclosed a copy of it. Documentation from the village that the village of Rouses Point will provide potable water and sanitary sewer, storm sewer services to this project. Once they receive this letter, then they can give their approval, and we can provide a copy of their approval, which will address item number 1 in your letter of April 10th, which we sent to them. If you have any further concerns, please do not hesitate to contact us, and sign sincerely, Rob White. And that's what I have.
I think on that matter, the only comment that we had was that we wanted it connected, so that there was no dead ends.
Right.
That's right? And if
That is
that-
correct.
If that's the case, then we have no objection. We just don't want a dead end up there because of, the health department issue.
So what we're getting at is whenever and wherever you'd like it connected along our property line, we're willing to do it for whatever purpose.
So we need to send a letter to the health department saying that, or to you, that we will supply water and sewer.
Correct.
Just water, right?
Well,
No sewer?
well, no, it does mean all of them, but the water was the holdup.
Right. How many more houses do you want to build?
We have room up there for, that last phase is, I believe, 9 or 10 lots. I think it's 10.
Hope you build them.
Ryan, can you give these guys just figured out the final details of it?
I think you're looking to find out where to connect the water line to,
Right.
right?
Correct. We did make provisions for a road off Mountain View Drive that will turn north and head towards the property that Clarence Ashline owns right now. That way, if anyone ever wanted to, in the future, develop that land, it would have access for, utilities. So our preference would be, if we had to extend it any more left or right, or I should say north or south, to go north with it. But, wherever is convenient for the townhouse expansion, that's fine with us.
Now that line runs up and back of Oakwood Drive, I understand, the 8-inch line.
No, it runs in front of the building, between the buildings and the garages, and it heads west. Right now, they're going up Beacon Heights with a water line, and they don't have any place to really bring
Yeah, I
it
understand.
out to
Say
us.
it.
What our intentions are, is to put a fire hydrant there so you can pull it off or clean out the line whenever you'd like until that future expansion is decided upon.
So I don't have an argument with that, if they put the hydrant there, and they could, eventually take the hydrant off and just tie in. The well will be there and everything will be there.
Better give it a dug on.
Yeah.
What is the status with the easement?
Well, that was a question that Doug threw at me the other day, because Oakwood's going to develop on the other side, I believe, on the other side of that road. He showed me some print that they're coming up with there. And there's the line runs up that road, I believe, that driveway, wherever it is, goes to Oakwood. We don't even know if we have an easement there. That was a question, so that's, Doug is supposed to be checking that out.
I don't think we don't even know if we own the line that goes in there. That might be Oakwood's line,
Boy, that's sweet.
because Alan, he was a developer that developed Oakwood. He put he's the one that installed that line. I don't know if it was ever turned over to the village. So, I mean, they're headed up a development with a water line and there's no place to bring it.
Dougie is in contact with the lady that owns that, so we really need to get that issue settled soon, so. Is Doug's on vacation all week, Eric?
Yes.
I think that's gonna be the #1 top priority, to flip that up.
That was a lady from Vermont that was here
Yeah.
last meeting, yeah.
we really need to settle that issue and fast. So these people, no one hold these people up any more than they are.
I guess the big question is there a way that we can get a letter from the village
They
stating
will
that,
supply water?
no, just stating that we have approval, you know,
Yeah.
contingent upon us agreeing to do that, so we can proceed and start building those houses?
I don't see any harm in that.
I mean, that's what our holdup is.
Right.
Right now, you know, no banks don't
They
loan
need
any
it,
money
yeah.
or anything.
Because if, once we give them the letter, then it has to go to the health department, correct? And then you have to wait for them.
And in the meantime, if you're worried for health reasons, just cleaning out that fire hydrant, you know, will sanitize that water, you know, keep that system clean until that's tied into and looped back around to Smith Street, which I believe is the intention.
Right. We don't want a dead end.
Oh, no,
We got enough of them. Is that satisfactory, gentlemen?
Yes.
Do we need a motion for?
I don't think we need a motion to send that letter, just send that letter to them. You would? Okay.
I'll make a motion that we send a letter for PRB development.
Second?
Motion made and second, any discussion? No discussion, all those in favor, vote by usual sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
You're
guys.
welcome. Reports of the mayor and trustees. The only thing on my agenda tonight is, as everybody's well aware of last Sunday's torrential rain, and Monday morning, I filed a declaration of disaster with the state of New York. I was very surprised, within a couple hours, we had a call from Albany. And they wanted us to get some estimates, and we have sent the letter out to the residents that we know of that had damage. To list the damage and the estimated amount. And we sent the state an estimated what we thought. That's what they wanted, and they are lumping this all into one disaster declaration by the governor with the southern part of the state, so our chances are much better that we'll get it. What it means, don't ask me, because I can't tell you. I have no idea, other than that FEMA may come through with some money. Also, John Carr wrote up an estimate of damages that were done to the village as far as the streets that were tore up and the washway, so that's being lumped into it too. I hope everything goes out. My heart goes out to the people that certainly were hit with all the water in their cellars and stuff and the damage. But I would like to express my sincere thanks to village crew and fire department and people that came in to assist us. Without a question, without them, we would have been a lot worse off. Well, the guys did a great job. Guys and gals did a great job out there, and they're all to be commended. And our village school responded immediately. The fire department was there, like bingo. And I think they were way above the call of duty. So, with that, the board, got comments?
Just one thing, George, I believe, I know Phil mentioned this morning, I believe it's that FEMA, if we do get covered, it's people that don't have insurance or what your insurance won't cover, correct?
I'm not sure of any of it.
It should be.
Any insurance that
Anything that
paid
the
is not
insurance
going to
won't
be
cover,
reimbursed.
and call the village, if you're stuck, you don't have insurance, or the insurance won't cover the damages, then call the village. If we do get money, then you can probably be reimbursed for it. But if there's anything that the insurance is paid for or whatever, I don't believe that FEMA will cover it.
I just want to say something about the flood insurance too. Like, a lot of people said that it wouldn't be covered under their homeowners because they don't have a rider on their insurance for flood damage. Which, I didn't even talk to my insurance company. I just lost a sub pump. I just paid it. But so, if people don't have flood insurance, you ought to check with your underwriter and make sure that you're covered just, down the road.
Okay, that's it for me. Trustee Menard.
My only item on the agenda tonight is the the sidewalk bid for Maple Street. I thank John Carr for helping us out with our specifications and documents for the sidewalks. And we posted a notice in the newspaper that we're going out to bid for the sidewalks on Maple Street, so we're kind of moving in a forward direction on this anyway. Hopefully the paving will come next. But if there's anybody out there that's watching and they want to bid on the sidewalks, please call the village office and get a packet from the village office for the specs and the documents on that. And that's all I have.
I believe we're opening the bids on the 2nd and
Fifth.
That's
5th.
it, at 2 p.m.
2 p.m. That's that Friday?
on a Friday, yes.
It's gotta be done within 30 days or 35 days, you said, Phil?
30 days.
30
was
days.
in effect.
Once we get it and vote on it.
Yep.
John,
we
will you,
will award the bid to.
how quickly will you be able to review that as far as determining appropriate bidder and low bidder and all that?
Well, I would hope that, see, 5th, you probably don't have a meeting until,
Right, we were hoping
call
to
a
kind
special meeting.
of get it done as quickly as we could.
if the 5th is then.
Friday, it's on a Friday.
I would be ready by Monday, I would think.
So we could probably have a special meeting by Tuesday.
Yeah.
Is that all right with the board to have a special meeting 4 o'clock Tuesday
Absolutely.
Fine.
with everybody?
It'll be the 9th.
No, it would be a week later.
Right, we're gonna open it on the 5th.
And
Be
we'll
the
warn it on
9th.
Tuesday, the 9th,
At what time, John?
or whatever date that is.
4.
Yeah, Tuesday the 9th, yeah. 4 o'clock. Is that it, Dale?
That's it.
Thank you, trustee Menard. Trustee Huckrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two items, parts to the first item. Water tank report from World International, John, or Eric, who's talking first?
Well, I'll shoot first here. You have in front of you a preliminary report. I talked to this fella today, I don't know if Eric talked to him as well. I had pestered him a couple of weeks ago about having his final report done today. Of course, he blamed it on the big blackout. I think he was on vacation himself, but in any event, it's kind of a preliminary report. I looked through it briefly. Obviously, there's not a lot of data there. It's essentially a cover letter. Kind of confirms our initial suspicions that the earthquake back in, I believe, April was a major cause for the cracking, along with some other notations that we made here as far as previous corrosion within the tank. Their opinion is that the tank has a life expectancy of 30 to 45 more years. He also indicates that he's compiling up a list of recommendations and upgrade estimates, and we have sent him the ones that our office had designed based on his 1995 report. He was looking that stuff over. And in our correspondence to the bidders on contract number 5, we asked them to hold their bid valid until August 26th, which is a week from tomorrow. I would suggest that maybe I don't feel that if you're like me, you probably haven't had enough time to digest his findings, and you may want to hold off on a decision on what to do with contract 5, or maybe you get your mind made up. In either case, I don't think it's critical tonight that decision be made. However, I did go through today very closely the scope of contracts 3 and 4. Look back through my notes as far as all our discussions with the water plant personnel as to which alternates they would recommend to accepted and or refused, and I guess it's right now the village board can award contracts to contracts number 3 and 4, regardless of what you do with contract 5. And I would suggest that's appropriate in that we need to get that work moving along so it interfaces with Landmark. The phasing of construction at the new water tank and at the water plant needs to move along. Previously, we had recommended that you wait and see what was going on with contract 5 before deciding on contract number 3. And the reason that we did that was there is one alternate in there involving a new metering building at the existing plant, water tank. Depending on whether you accepted or rejected that alternate, it would have changed the low bidder from Tracy Tremblay to Luck Brothers. After that meeting, I had requested the contractors to extend their bid to the 26th of August, which everybody except Tremblay agreed to. Tremblay did not agree to it, and consequently now Luck Brothers is the low responsible bidder. It doesn't make a lot of difference to the village. Actually, it doesn't make any difference to the village cost-wise now, even though Tremblay backed out. Because in the interim, we have, you can say we, I had a very minor part in it, but the village DPW and Doug Ferris operated the valves in the existing valve pit, and they are functional. There is no real need to construct a new metering building at this time. With that all said, in this complicated scenario that totally baffled you, what I have presented to you is a recommendation on contract amounts and awards, contracts 3 and 4. Luck Brothers submitted the second lowest base bid. However, in discussing with village water plant personnel the various priorities they have, they suggest that alternates number 1, 3, 4, and 5 be accepted. Number 1 would be to delete the construction of a new metering building, and that's essentially because we have, found that the existing valves can be operated. They might need a little work, but we certainly don't think that it's worth $54,000 to build a new metering building. We had included a restroom at the new tank. Plant personnel indicated to me they could get by without that they had better use for those funds. Fencing at the new tank was added, is suggested to be added to contract 3 through alternate number 4. We included that as a separate item, basically the budgetary thing. The prices submitted by all the bidders were reasonable, I guess. Luck Brothers included, so it would appear appropriate to award that work to them via that contract. And the last alternate, item 5, was a vault down at the water treatment plant, similar to the one at the existing tank. After discussing it with Gary and looking over the value of the credit, $13,000, it's our recommendation that you take that credit and not construct construct that vault. By doing that, the valves at the plant will be buried down below the parking lot, just like they are throughout the rest of the building. That basically is a quick rundown on contract number 3, general construction. The suggested recommended award amount at this time would be $174,570. Contract number 4, the alternates basically follow the recommendations in contract number 3, with the exception of the last one, which is a D-lead and a generator. Again, in discussing pretty closely with water plant personnel about all that generator would do is to run the couple of little meters and the heat at the new tank. With all the hard work of the electrical department getting everything below grade, it's felt that the generator would be essentially a waste of money. What the water plant personnel would feel a better use of the money is to purchase a portable generator that would also run their valve exercising machine, and then they could use it to run the metering pumps and the little electric heater in the water tank, if we need the power to go out and in. That recommended contract amount is $20,747. With these two contract amounts, you're essentially saving every cent you can save. Each one of these credits or deletes, as the case may be, have been looked over pretty closely by both our office and the plant as well as Doug Ferris. They're all pretty good values for the village residents. In fact, there's a few of them that are exceptional values. That kind of summarizes our recommendation. As far as contract number 4, or number 5, the tank rehabilitation, which I suggest you might want to take another week and look at its final report. I looked very closely at what would be done to the other contracts number 2, 3, and 4, if the tank was eliminated or if it wasn't eliminated from the system. There's some minimal changes in the buried piping at both locations that could be done to facilitate either decision by the board. And those could be incorporated in the next week or so. They're not super critical time-wise. However, the award contracts 3 and 4 are kind of pressing matters that shouldn't be delayed.
John, on the bottom of contract 5, you've got the weaving of the pipe.
Yes.
The piping. How much piping are we looking at?
About, I recall, sorry I don't have the figure right in front of me, but it's about 3,200 feet, maybe
3,350?
3,200 linear feet. That would be 3-foot diameter piping. What I would suggest, if that piping arrangement is to be constructed, that's the intent of the village. I really think that the cost of that item and the scope of the work is such that a separate bid for that work should be put out. It's kind of a hefty change order to negotiate.
How much are we looking at doing that pipe?
And probably on the order of 250,000 plus or minus a little bit.
Basically same cost as it would be to refurbish the tank.
Yes.
36 inch pipe. 36 inch pipe is that big.
Yeah, I spent a good deal of time in it, George, judging the different options. 24, 30, 36, 48. You get 60, like crazy, you know, buy it. For a municipality this small. The 36 inch appears to be the most economical. Again, it's pipe that would essentially be constructed in place, never really touched again.
And how long will that last? How long will
Well,
that piping last?
That pipe would
Okay.
have a design life of at least 100 years. I won't be here to fix it 100 years from now.
So basically the same life as the tank, as the water tank we just put up.
I would think piping would last a good deal longer than the tank. It's less susceptible to damage. It just,
So it'd be a one-time cost.
and again, the purpose of that pipe is just to provide the chlorine enough time to have its necessary reaction with any contamination. It does not, the performance of the system does not equal the existing tank, and it's not elevated water that you can draw from, but it certainly appears to be the most reasonable option if the existing tank is to be used.
Now, I mean, on the existing tank, in that report, it says that the life expectancy of the tank can be projected for an additional 3 or 4 rehabilitation cycles, or 35 to 40 years. So, on each of these 3 or 4 rehabilitation cycles, what's going to be the projected cost on this? Is it going to be fairly the same as what it's going to cost us to refurbish this now?
No, basically, the refurbishment now includes a lot of piping changes, a lot of addressing the structural deficiencies, and a lot of upgrades as far as OSHA compliance and that sort of thing. Safety ladders, safety climbs, all that good stuff that's happened since 1960. As far as what this fella is referring to, a refurbishment, is basically a cleaning and painting. Typically on the inside, you clean and paint every 10 to 15 years, depending on the climate. Up here, based on what you got out of the last one, I would think 15 years is maybe more appropriate for a paint cycle. The cost of that would be hard to say what the cost is going to be 15 years from now, but if you had to repaint just the inside now, it would be about $30,000. As far as the outside painting, that's again on the order of a 20-year cycle, 15 to 20 years. I would think that again, that's going to cost another, if you did it right now, it would be about $35,000, so maybe total repaint cost is $60,000 or something.
Anywhere from 50 to 100,000 by the time you're ready to redo it again.
To compare it in present day cost, $60,000 every 15 years, you know, without taking the inflation type of thing.
It's just something to think about. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to keep the upkeep costs of the tank if you do keep it.
Exactly. And
Where you put the piping in, and stuff.
Again, the one thing that the elevated tank does, provides more fire protection and more flexibility in the system, but certainly it is an ongoing cost.
Thanks.
John,
Thank you, John.
I just have one question. John, in terms of the prior bids that you have here in Part B of existing .5 tank is capped, contract number 5, $237,127.60.
Yes.
Given the new findings by this testing, is that number still good?
Yes, basically in that contract, I included a clause for the bidder to include an allowance of material and labor, in the amount, I believe, of $20,000 for him to address the conditions that we knew basically existed. The 3 cracks, and I believe these guys found one other smaller crack. He mentions in his brief report here some lower rods. We had called for those to be reconditioned. He did find a couple of little things that we didn't know about, but they would still be essentially covered by that allowance.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. I think at this point, I'd like to make a motion that we proceed with contract number 3, general construction, and contract number 4, electrical construction. That doesn't have to be roll call, is it, Bill? Just a motion?
It would be better.
Okay.
Second.
Reword it as you would, sir.
A motion by trustee Huckrow, seconded by trustee Penfield. Is there any more discussion? There being no discussion, roll call vote. Trustee Menard.
Aye.
Trustee Huckrow.
Aye.
Trustee Penfield.
Aye.
Trustee Jefferson.
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye.
And before we go on, John, could you, would like to address the situation at Maple Street where the water line crosses over some existing pipes that were there. We're not happy with the way it's laying in there, and we want to get that fixed. We're about ready to think about paving Maple Street.
Okay, as far as that intersection goes, we looked very closely at the actual conditions at the intersection. Eric and his team put together the field data as the pipes were laid. There was encountered in the excavation, I believe, one additional sewer line that we did not know about. Well, actually, we knew about it, we just weren't sure of the exact elevation. I have looked over the configuration of the piping, and the only practical alternative to the way that it is constructed at present would be to locate it about 16 feet below grade through that intersection. I am not in favor of installing water mains that deep. Water mains do on occasion need to be repaired. I also have looked over the depth of cover at the location and the encapsulating insulation that was installed during the installation. I looked over the work that Doug's people had done in the field, as well as some office research. Their insulating technique and their insulation thickness selection, that sort of thing, is comparable to the specified 6-foot vary that the rest of the transmission main is installed at. Nonetheless, I mean, we all get a little nervous about people digging through a 16-inch diameter transmission main. You don't worry so much if it's iron, because it stands up a little better. With that in mind, there is a warning tape over it. There is 4 inches of insulation plus 6 or 8 inches of sand underneath the insulation. It would be practically impossible for someone to dig into that water main and fracture it. It would be beyond belief that someone would do such a thing, just because the warning tape you gotta go through that, you gotta go through sand backfill, then you have to go through the insulation, through some more sand backfill. But if you are, there's been some discussion as far as trying to deflect it with some 45-degree fittings. There's no practical way to do that and meet the separation requirements required by the health department from the sewer. Remember, there's 4 sewers that cross, 2 of which are forced main. The only practical way to do, or the only feasible way to do that would be to put a 16-foot lead through the area. Just if anybody ever had to repair it, do anything with it, get to it for whatever purpose, would be.
Why 16?
Well, basically, you have a sewer
Yeah.
that extends down about 12 feet.
Is that far down?
Yes, that you have to go under.
Oh, I was having a problem.
You have to have the 2 feet of cover between, or 2 feet of separation, vertical separation between the sewer and water.
What about ice? What about, I mean, I know there's insulation and stuff like that. What happens if ice, you know, fractured the line or whatever? Because it's not down, I mean, I don't think it's down far enough. I'm not an engineer, but.
Well, to put it in perspective, I think down on the south end of Maple Street where the 10-inch main cut across, last year, the sewer force main project put a new gravity sewer down there. The 10-inch main, which has been in service since 63 or so, had about 3 foot of cover, 3 foot 10, I think, at one side of where the sewer crossed it. This has about 2 or 3 inches less than that. The 10-inch main on the south end of Maple is a distribution pipe, so the flow within the pipe is relatively small. This transmission main would have 500 to 2,000 gallons a minute going through it, essentially 24/7, 365. You know, the biggest danger I would see to the pipe is that it would be I guess the biggest danger that I would see is somebody unauthorized excavating and hitting it and fracturing it. I'm not really at all worried about the frost. I'm not worried about the freezing aspect. The biggest impact that it might have is you're going to perhaps get a little different frost heave in the road in that area. Essentially, the whole Maple Street, as with any other street, will heave in the winter and actually out come up probably 3, 4, 5 inches. This might not heave quite as much. It may have a little dip in there. To rectify that, what could be done is go back in on top of the existing insulation and lay insulation 8 foot wide as opposed to 4 foot wide as it is now. Basically transition that frost heave differential so that it's more gradual as opposed to sharp.
What about frost getting under it and kicking it up?
Basically what we have done, and this is a very common construction practice when you get into shallow areas. You insulate up the sides and you insulate across the top, but you do not insulate underneath it. The reason being, the water passing through the pipe, as well as the natural heat of the ground, will keep it from freezing below the pipe. I'm not really worried at all about that.
You're not worried about that?
The only real thing that I am a little concerned with is that you might end up with a dip in the road. I would suggest that it's probably well worth the money to go back and widen the insulation manual to 8 foot width or if you wanna go much wider than that, it's a waste of money. Again, it's, you could go back through and relay the two sewage force main, deflect those up or down. But I really don't think it's not, in my view, necessary. I have designed water mains that cross bridges throughout many years, and there's basically 2 inches of insulation around those mains, and they're hanging out in the middle of the air. This has got 2.5 foot of cover on it plus some insulation. So I'm quite comfortable. The only other problem at that intersection, and again, there's telephone conduits, electrical conduits, the storm sewers, the sanitary sewers, and all that stuff in there. There's one joint that was deflected more than we wanted. The contractor didn't have that fitting. And again, it's kind of a minuscule deflection criteria that we use, and plastic pipe is much more forgiving in this instance. But they didn't have the proper bend right there at the site. They went ahead and assembled the joint, deflected the pipe as best they could, and promised that if it blew apart during pressure testing, that they would obviously have to go back and replace it. I would think if it made it through pressure testing, it certainly is going to make it through 50 years of service.
And you and I aren't gonna have to worry about it in 50 years. Well, you are.
I'll be an old buzzard, I won't worry too much.
I'd like to ask Brian what he feels about what
Brian,
John
yeah.
just said. You agree with him?
Over the top of the insulation, we have, I think, 17 conduits right now that we spread out over the top of the insulation, so there's actually less fill over the top of the insulation. I don't know.
That makes me nervous having that conduit over there, because if it goes,
Because we
well,
haven't
with
really,
frost and, you know, I mean, say we did get frost and, you know, and there, I mean, something could happen and if it snapped the conduit, I mean, it's,
I mean, if the water's gonna be going through it, you're not gonna see it freeze up. The water itself is gonna keep that fairly warm, like you said.
John, you figure that even in the dead of winter at night when water use is considerably less, that you're gonna have enough flow through there that this would be a problem?
Well, the least I've ever seen the village water plant operating is with one filter on line with one of the industrials, and that's pumped at 540 gallons a minute. That's a pretty good size velocity through that line. Certainly, I guess, the only real practical way to upgrade the installation, other than going 16 feet deep, which I don't really think anybody wants to talk about, is we could go back through and put some additional insulation over the top. I really don't feel that that's necessary, but if it makes you feel better, it's not that expensive.
This water is right, you know, when it's done, we've got a lot of money invested in this, and we got a street we're gonna have a lot of money invested in, and when we're done, I don't want the problems we had last time the street was done.
And that would, widening the insulation blanket over the top would help maintain a smoother profile along Maple Street.
That's through the insulation.
If we,
That's through the added insulation.
if we
It's not that
pondered
costly.
this thing for 2 more weeks, would it be too late to be able to do something different?
No, I don't think so.
It wouldn't be. I'm still not comfortable with it, and I know you know a lot more about this than I do, Major.
And perhaps maybe we need to put together a little sketch so that it can all be visualized. I know it's kind of hard to, it's very clear in my mind because I've sketched things out and I've seen Eric's sketches and stuff. In fact, it actually complies with what the health department approved for this particular project. I was a little worried when we got up Clinton Street. Some of the residents had indicated they didn't have basements in their houses and they felt it was doing shallow bedrock. And to try to blast an 8-foot wide trench through bedrock up there made me a little nervous, you know, when you start breaking people's foundations and that sort of thing. So we did include the computations of heat velocity and the insulation detail on the drawings that were submitted to the health department, and they found no objection to it. It's a quite common technique. They don't necessarily like it in a busy intersection like that, but
Well, it's okay for everybody, we'll sit on it until the second,
Fine with me.
make it, decide what we want to do then.
Okay.
Okay, let's go back to the water tank. Want to talk about it before we make a motion? Want to make a motion and then talk about it?
What do you think?
Well, it's going to be dependent on our conversation. What's the appropriate thing? Doesn't make any difference, does it, Bill?
Whatever you want.
You know, up until 5 minutes ago, I think we all pretty much decided that we were going to abandon the old tank. And that's what we all agreed to, and see if we can sell it for somebody else that wants one, or sell it for scrap or whatever. And we don't have a whole lot of information in this report, but I think there's enough information that I'm comfortable with making that motion.
Yeah, I mean,
You want the motion and then discuss it?
I think before we wanted to keep the tank, but listening to Phil, it took me a little bit longer to get on board to realize that there's too many variables. I mean, there's too many, you're spending a lot of bad money, and I don't think it's the time to be spending money. I think it's time to get rid of it. And that's the reason we spent the extra $6,000 or $7,000 to get a, I didn't have enough information to decide before. But I do now. There's damage to this tank, and there's probably damage in the ground. And I think we ought to get rid of it.
Then I will make a motion that we abandon the existing water tank, and we do this two separate motions, Phil? Send out bids to, okay, abandon the existing water tank and proceed with option 2, whatever that was, with the pipe, the in-ground piping.
I think a lot of it too, I mean, with swaying my decision is the refurbishment. You know, we're gonna have to refurbish, now whether we see it or not, it's gonna, you know, before the end of the tank life, it's gonna have to be refurbished 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I need a second.
Second, I'll second.
Okay. Motion's made by trustee Huckrow, seconded by trustee Menard. Is there any more discussion?
You know, I mean, there's cracks in
I
it
just
now.
think we're gonna be spending a lot of money
Yeah.
down
I
the
mean,
road. That's,
what we talked, you're looking at 65,000 to paint the inside and outside every 15 years. That's not saying that there's gonna be any cracks inside in another 15
That's
years.
in addition to this 200 and
Right.
whatever thousand currently.
Right. To where if we spend the 250,000 for the piping, we're done. How much is that gonna affect our fire protection? Do you believe that's gonna affect it at all? A lot, little?
Can't even be any worse than it is right now.
That's what I'm saying, we're gonna
We
be
should be
3
better off.
times better, we're
We
gonna
should
be 3 times
better
better.
off now than we were before, so.
Right, I mean, we're going from a 500 to a $1.5 million. We should be 3 times better than what we were before. I can't
So
see
how does that affect us with the health department as far as having the daily amount of water, or the amount of water available if we have a problem in the pump station?
The basic criteria that they like to see would be 2 days supply in there, which you would be a little shy of. You do have the advantage of having 3 separate filtration streams at the water treatment plant, which most people don't have. Most plants would have either 1 or perhaps 2. You have 3. You have the original duplex plus the new one.
So we do have a little bit of redundancy there to stay online.
Oh, yeah, you have very redundant water plants. One of the best water plants as far as redundancy that I know of.
Any other discussion? You want a roll call, or you want a roll call? Roll call vote, trustee Menard.
Aye.
Trustee Huckrow.
Aye.
Trustee Penfield.
Aye.
Trustee Jefferson.
Aye.
And the mayor stays neutral. He doesn't have to go on this one.
All right, and I would also like to make a motion that we advertise the existing water tank for sale for whatever purpose anybody wants to use it for.
Can I make a suggestion on that?
Sure.
I canvassed pretty much every person on the East Coast, and there's nobody gonna buy that tank. I would suggest instead of advertising it for sale, that we just put together a demolition contract and get it out there and leave the bidder the option of giving you money or charging you.
That sounds fine to me, as long as, you know, I don't want to give the thing away.
Well, as we found out before, it's gonna cost you money to get it done.
Well, I'd like to try this option first, since we're in no rush anyway. And see if we can get somebody, even if somebody would buy it for scrap.
I'd like to postpone taking it down till the next fiscal year, or at least to the next calendar year. Because it's gonna cost us money. I don't think we've budgeted for
Oh, we can't take it down till we're online.
Can't do it till we're online anyway.
The other one won't be online, what, till about 1st of October? That reminds me while we're talking, you know, I don't want us to use the report.
Don't make it any more complicated than it
No, that got nothing to do with anything.
Okay, mind-boggling as it is.
Do we put for sale or demolition? And we advertise water tank for sale or demolition?
Well, they have to demolish it anyway, so I don't care how it's worded.
It's gotta be worth something to scrap.
What was the one quote that we had, John, on that? Wasn't it $41,000 for someone to take it away?
That's correct. And that was including the scrap value of it. I believe it
It was
was
including the what, I'm sorry?
Scrap value.
scrap value, and I
Scrap
believe
value.
it was their intent to re-erect it
Mhm.
in another location.
Well, I don't want to have to pay to get rid of something that we might be able to get, might be able to get something out of, don't know for
All we have to do is spend $75 or $100 to advertise it.
Advertise.
If we're getting takers, fine. If we don't, well, then
Then we'll go to the other option.
Motion.
So, I'm sorry,
Entertain a
John,
motion.
but
Right, I second it.
could you repeat what your motion was? 'Cause I'm-
The motion was that we would advertise the tank for sale to include the dismantling of it.
So in other words, they would come and dismantle it and take it away and pay us to do that?
Exactly. And might not happen, but
we might have to incur some expense.
we might have to. And I might have to consider a different option, but there's no huge rush on it anyway. So why not see if we can advertise it this way?
Okay, I'll second that.
Yeah,
Or did we have a
yeah.
second? I'm sorry, excuse me. You got me confused. Okay, sorry.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, vote by use of sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
Thanks for the help, John.
We also need to go out, make a motion for the bid for the piping, for the 36-inch piping.
Well, we have to make a motion to proceed with the plans on it. We're not ready to do a motion on the bid at this point, are we?
I believe it's pretty clear little set of plans. It's basically one sheet. There's not a lot of design modifications. I don't think.
We ready to do a bid on it?
Yeah, let's do it as fast as we can. Let's get it done. I'll make a motion that we go out to bid for the 36-inch pipe.
I'll second.
Second part of the contract or whatever.
Publishing, but,
Yeah.
Motion made and seconded. Motion by trustee Menard, seconded by trustee Huckrow. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor, vote by the use of sound of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.
And one other item, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to call an request an executive session to discuss outside personnel.
That's the roll call vote.
On what?
The motion,
Oh.
expenditure of funds.
Well, it's just an advertisement for bid. We haven't awarded a bid yet.
Okay.
We haven't even spent any funds yet.
Gotcha.
Point of order.
Okay. I'd like to request an executive session to discuss civic center personnel.
Second.
Motion by trustee Huckrow, seconded by trustee Menard. Roll call vote, trustee Menard.
Aye.
Trustee Huckrow.
Aye.
Trustee Penfield.
Aye.
Trustee Jefferson.
Aye.
Mayor votes aye.
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, trustee Huckrow. Trustee Penfield, please.
Eric?
Yep.
I know we got all tied up in the existing tank, but we're still putting pipe out there, so I'll give you an update.
Sorry about that.
The 16-inch line was installed all the way across Wyatt's, stopped just south of Wyatt's fence line. We put in the air release manhole, and then we're on hold until this decision was made. The 8-inch line was installed all the way to the end of Clinton Street. The bacteriological sample and the pressure test both came back good. We've been for the last week doing the services, moving the residents over from the 4-inch line to the 8-inch line. All the residents on the south side of the street are now complete. We're going to be going to the north side of the street and start working there. Unless you have any questions, that's just about it, and thanks for the decision. But any questions?
Thank you, sir.
One other thing, if you're available, we can maybe schedule a pre-construction conference for the contracts 3 and 4 next week.
I'm available.
We need to get that work rolling, and would suggest having,
You gonna have the bids back? Oh, you already got that. That's right.
what I had tentatively worked out with Landmark to see what, now we're interfacing with the 3 contractors all in one area. It needs to be, get them all in one room so you can hit them all with the same hammer. If it's possible, we would like to be able to do that on Wednesday, the 27th.
Got a calendar here somewhere. I need to look. Right there. This guy.
Just having that open date there.
Yeah, that looks okay. What time?
Anytime.
That's free. Pick your time when you'll be.
9 o'clock in the morning, maybe?
Okay.
Anyway, that can be done on Tuesday morning. Anyway, it can be done Tuesday morning. I've got to be out of town Wednesday, and I like to be there.
I can shoot for that. Can I get back to you tomorrow and use Wednesday as a second option?
If that's okay with
Fine with me. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
early morning.
9 o'clock?
Yeah.
One question. Painters on the tank, they wound up today. They told me that's all they had to do was paint the bottom, the inside of the bottom.
I forgot all about that. The roof exterior is complete. The interior roof is complete with the final coat of paint. I just need to go in and do some thickness testing. The shell, the upright flat portion, they've completed the final paint. And now the cone and the floor on the interior of the tank, they're cleaning all that sand out that they did all the sandblasting on the roof and the shell. Clean that all out, and then they're going to sandblast that, and they're hoping by the end of the week that they'll be complete with the interior. So right now they're 2/3, 3/4 done.
The Pipers are gonna be here next week.
That's what we've been informed.
He's been promising that, George, but I
I
would say right after Labor Day is my best guess.
I thought I'd ask, just to smooth it.
He's
Thank you.
promised it since April, but that ain't gonna happen.
All right. Everybody's squared away now? Trustee Penfield?
The only thing that I have this evening is an announcement for a public hearing for the Zoning Board of Appeals to be held here in Halsted Hall on September 8th at 4:30 PM. The purpose of the public hearing is for an area variance for Mr. Glenn Gerson of 32 Maple Street to build a carport on the north side of his residence. And I believe that the regular meeting of the zoning board will follow thereafter. That's it.
Thank you, Trustee Penfield. Trustee Jefferson?
Okay, I just have a couple things tonight. I wanted to mention that the village employees did a good job during the recent rainstorm last Sunday. Again, I'd like to mention the fire department too did a good job in their commitment to the village. We had a lot of damage on Pratt Street. There was a lot of water. I had a lot of water in my basement along with a lot of other people. And the fire department stepped in and did a good job. We continue to see tough financial conditions in Vermont and upstate. And 500 people were notified today in Essex Junction that they're being laid off. And whether you believe it or not, that does have an effect on our economy. It looks like the rumors continue in our village as Clinton County's largest employer appear imminent to large layoffs. And that really bothers me. I hope the economy gains here in momentum soon, but it looks like a jobless recovery appears more and more every day. We continue to see state and federal government spending, deficit spending, and I hope we draw the line in state and the federal because we can't continue to spend if we don't have the money. And again, here in the village is the same way. We have a budget, we try to stick to it. Emergencies do come up and there's sometimes things, I think in the near future, we maybe have to put a little cushion into our budget for emergencies. I think everybody here in the board's on the same page. We're all here because, you know, we believe that the welfare of the village is very important. But bigger is not better when it comes to spending. And I hope we can get through the next 6 months without any more emergencies, but things don't look too good as far as the economy. Again, I don't like to be a pessimist, but I think we got to hold the line on spending where we can and conserve where we can. People come to me and they say we're spending a lot of money in the village, and it does bother me. I don't waste my money. I don't want to waste the village's. So I hope it's very important that we conserve electricity and all the resources available here in the village. And I hope that every dollar we spend is spent in a fiscally responsive manner, and I hope that we can continue to hold the line on our spending and keep taxes where they should be, down low. And that's the only bad news I got tonight. All I have to report.
Update on the sewer project.
Eric, did you want to talk in the sewer, John? I forgot, I wanted to do that first, but.
Basically, I'll give you a pretty concise update here. The final punch list has been issued on the force main contract, and plans for reconstruction of Maple Street should be completed and in the paper this week. I think we've got a pretty clear direction now. We got held up a couple of days with the power outage, which I realized was not a big deal here. It was in other parts of the state, kind of messed up a few computer things for us. The other work is basically pending permission from DEC, and I can hound the heck out of that guy, but I don't get anything back in writing from him, so I will continue to hound him.
John, should we be going after him, asking him for an extension on that
Yes.
segment of our?
Actually in progress.
Okay,
Made
thank
a
you.
couple of calls and told them the letter was coming. They said, no big hurry. It is me.
Thank you. Okay, other reports. Is that it, Trustee Jefferson?
That's all I have tonight, John.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Just wanted to let you folks know that I'm going to election training school tomorrow afternoon. That's all I have.
Arson?
I got a couple of things. First of all, I had passed out a memo to the board on August 12th, just to let the board know that Ray Carroll, our youth commissioner, turned over to the village $1,700 from proceeds from a baseball tournament and solicitation of donations. They're going to be using that money towards the purchase of, I believe it's a couple of batting cages, and we're purchasing that from Dick's Sporting Goods. So just to let you know, when you see that list of bills, that's where that money's coming from. And then on the capital projects here, I passed out a memo regard to that. I was trying to figure out exactly how much additional funds we need for interim financing, because I'm not sure if we are going to be in the fall pool for the EFC or the spring pool, or which one it is. And what I was doing was asking for contact bond council for additional $1.2 million. I don't know if this is high or if it's not high enough. I know right now in contract one, we have, including the bills that I have in the house, we have a total of $296,622.96 remaining on that contract. On contract number 2 with Luck Brothers, we owe $477,439. We owe another $6,000 to $7,000 to World International Testing for their report that we gave tonight. I know there's 3 more contracts that you awarded this evening, and I don't know what the additional engineering costs are, so I know there's a lot of unknowns here that I'm not really sure.
Where do we stand, John, with
We were pretty close at the last meeting as far as the intended budget that was established back in 2000. I think with your board's decision tonight, we will be very close, if not a little bit under. We need to do a little paperwork generation there as far as that goes, and update arson and what I think is going to be a realistic figure. But now I know where we're going. So I think we're in pretty good shape on the overall project budget.
Arson would like to get some money in there, so we don't have to keep going out with your hands. I don't hardly blame them.
You know, and if we are in the fall pool, I don't even know when we start to get the money for that. If it's right off, or if it's a certain waiting period, or what.
It's usually on the order of 3 months after.
So you're talking at least January.
Fiscal year 2004.
Arson, you're a finance guy, I'm not, but I was told today that we've got about $2.3 million available right now, right? In the bank, so to speak.
Well, that's a multi-fund account.
We have about that amount of money.
That's a multi-fund account.
But we have that amount of money.
Yes.
Okay. And
I know what you're saying.
apparently, we have about $1 million worth of bills. That leaves us then with about 1.3. I don't have a problem if we have to borrow some money if we have to, but what about that 1.3? I don't understand it. I'm asking for an explanation because I don't understand it.
All these bills that I explained tonight, these are all bills that are eventually going to become payable out of the water fund.
Right.
When we start paying long-term backs. But right now, it's in a capital project fund.
Right.
Which is separate from all the other funds.
Yeah.
So that's where we're supposed to be taking the money out of. You know, that $2 million that you're talking about, that's your electric, your general fund, your water, sewer, and so on and so forth. All that stuff. That's all together.
Yeah.
But this right here is for this one project alone. And then you have your sewer project, which is a totally separate thing also, which the estimate that I have in hand is $490,000 paid Maple Street. And, we don't have the funding for that either. And my understanding is that most of that is going to cover the sewer project. because what happened was, is the board voted to, on two different budget resolutions, approximately $3 million apiece to cover these projects. And on the particular, on the water fund, we only went out and borrowed 1.325 million. With the assumption that we were going to get into one of these taller spring pools, and that has not happened.
If that in fact came through with the fall funding, would that ease the amount that you have to borrow? Do you think you gotta go get that anyway now?
No, we're gonna have to get that anyway. As John said, we're not gonna get the money until at least January. And that's assuming that, we do get in that pool.
Good time to borrow money, it's cheap.
The rates are starting to go up a little bit. Last year,
good time to
year-
borrow money.
No, I don't like to borrow money either, Bob. I mean, they're gonna raise rates eventually, it's just a matter of time. What are we gonna do? We have to borrow money, we have to borrow
No, I
money.
can sit down with John tomorrow or whenever he's coming back to make sure my figures are correct and see if we actually need more than what I'm saying or we need less.
Well,
But,
can authorization wait till next meeting? Is that gonna be for you?
They've already approved that.
That's true too. I was just,
We have approved it.
you actually approved 2.985, 2,985,000.
Let's call it 3 million.
And I'm just going to the board to just inform them and let them know what's going on.
Okay, well,
And,
when you said you're requesting, I didn't know you
Well,
needed action on it.
yeah, you actually have already authorized, and I guess I could go on my own and do it, but I just want to make you guys aware of it. But I'll sit down with John to find out and give you guys a report whether
You have to.
whether it's gonna be less or more. Because it looks like it's gonna be at least another 6 months before we get that.
It could be longer. It could be a spring pool, so that would be a summer, be a year from now.
I think we better push for that fall pool if we can.
Probably been pushing since.
You only push so much, those guys in.
Is that it, Arson?
Yes.
Thank you. Brian? All right. I'll open the meeting to the public at this time. Anybody wishing to address the board may do so. No one wishing to do so, I'll take a motion for recess.
Second.
Motion by trustee Huckrow, seconded by trustee Bernard. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.